Not every passenger wants to get where they're going, some just want to take you with them. They say the city never sleeps, but that's not true. Past midnight, the city doesn't just rest, it changes. The crowds vanish, the laughter fades, and what's left behind feels hollow, like a stage after the play is over. The neon still flickers, but it feels tired, bleeding into puddles on the cracked pavement. Even the air tastes different, like metal and damp concrete. That's when I work. Driving a taxi at night isn't glamorous. It's a grind. Drunks who can't remember their address, men who don't want their wives knowing where they've been, nurses too exhausted to speak, lovers who treat the back seat like their own private room. Most rides blur together. But every so often, something happens that burrows under your skin, refusing to leave. It's not the angry customers that keep me awake. It's the quiet ones. The ones who sit too still. Who watch too closely. And that night gave me a passenger I can't forget. One I never should have picked up. It was just past 2 a.m. when the dispatch crackled through my radio, loud in the silence of the cab. Pickup. Intersection of Willow and Cross. I frowned. Willow and Cross was near the cemetery. Not a place people usually called from at this hour. But I was closest, so I pressed the button, muttered my confirmation, and hit the meter. The streets were empty as I drove. Traffic lights blinked pointlessly over intersections with no cars. Storefronts hunched in darkness, their shutters pulled tight. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine, and underneath it, something else. The faintest rattle, like coins shaking in a tin, though there was nothing loose in the cab. By the time I reached the intersection, the fog had rolled in. Thick, low, swallowing the road in gray. My headlights carved 2 narrow tunnels through it, and that's when I saw her. A woman. Standing at the curb. She didn't look like someone leaving a bar, or a worker coming off the night shift. She looked out of time. Her dress was pale, the hem brushing her ankles. Her hair was pinned in a way I'd only ever seen in old photographs. She didn't shiver, though the air had turned sharp and cold. She didn't wave me down. Didn't move at all. Just stood there. Waiting. I rolled the window down, forcing my voice steady. Need a ride? Her head turned toward me slowly, too slowly, like she'd been wound up and set in motion. She gave the faintest nod, then stepped off the curb. The rear door opened without a sound. She slid inside, settling into the seat without shifting the leather, without even the weight of her body making the suspension dip. And then, the temperature dropped. Not a draft. Not a breeze. A sudden, brutal cold that seeped through my jacket and bit into my bones. My breath fogged the glass as if winter had crept in all at once. In the mirror, she sat upright, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes were locked forward, unblinking. The air felt heavy in my lungs. Something told me I shouldn't ask her where she was going. She finally spoke after several minutes, her voice breaking the silence like a ripple in still water. Elmhurst. Number 47. The address meant nothing to me. I nodded, put the car into gear, and pulled onto the main road. For a while, I tried to pretend it was just another ride. Just another quiet passenger who didn't want to talk. Late night, huh? I asked, keeping my tone light. No answer. I cleared my throat, tried again. Long way from Willow and Cross. Still nothing. I glanced at the mirror. She was sitting perfectly upright, back not even touching the seat, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her posture was so rigid it looked unnatural, like a mannequin propped in place. Her gaze wasn't on me, wasn't on the city outside. She stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on nothing I could see. The silence pressed down heavy. Even the usual city noises, distant sirens, stray dogs barking, seemed to fade the farther we drove. All I could hear was the steady thrum of the engine and the faint hiss of her breathing. Every time I looked in the mirror, she was there. Still. Unmoving. Watching the road ahead. But then, something changed. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The mirror seemed lighter, emptier. I leaned forward, blinked. And the back seat was empty. My stomach lurched. Cold sweat broke across my forehead. I whipped my head around. She was there. Sitting quietly. Same posture. Same stillness. But she wasn't in the mirror anymore. No reflection. Just the empty seat behind me. And when I looked back at the road, the meter ticked upward on its own, the numbers climbing faster than they should have. We drove deeper into parts of the city I didn't recognize. Streets grew narrower, the buildings taller, pressing in on either side like crooked teeth. Streetlights flickered above us, some dimming out entirely as we passed beneath them. The houses looked abandoned, boarded windows, doors hanging off their hinges, roofs sagging under years of rot. Their dark frames leaned into the fog, watching us roll by. I slowed, frowning. "Are you sure this is the way?" That's when she leaned forward. I hadn't heard her move. One moment she was still as stone, the next her face was close, too close, her breath brushing against my ear. It was icy, sharp enough to make my skin prickle. Elmhurst. Number 47. The way she said it this time was wrong. Drawn out. Hollow. As if the words were echoing down a long tunnel before they reached me. I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing myself not to flinch. All right. We're almost there. The road curved, and then I saw it. A sagging house crouched at the very end of the street, swallowed by shadows. Its paint peeled away in strips, gray wood beneath like exposed bone. The windows were boarded up, but something about the boards looked broken, like they'd been clawed at from the inside. The taxi rolled to a stop in front. My headlight spilled weak light over the porch, revealing a door that sagged on rusted hinges. Before I could say anything, the rear door opened. She stepped out. But there was no sound. No shuffle of fabric, no thud of shoes on gravel. She moved like mist, her figure sliding into the darkness. The door shut behind her without a click. For a long moment, I sat there, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Then I let out the breath I'd been holding. "Weirdest passenger I've had in a while," I muttered. My voice sounded too loud, too nervous. But when I glanced at the rear seat, there were damp streaks across the leather. Not water. Not spilled drink. Soil. Dark and wet, as if she'd been sitting in the ground before stepping into my cab. And the house. The longer I stared, the less real it looked. The edges blurred, like a smudge on glass. As if it wasn't a house at all, but something wearing the shape of one. Before I could drive off, something tugged at me, a prickling at the back of my neck. I glanced at the seat behind me. It was wet. Not the kind of wet you get from spilled coffee or rain-soaked clothes. This was darker, thicker. Damp clumps of soil clung to the upholstery, smears trailing like fingerprints dragged across the leather. The smell hit me next, earthy, metallic. Like a graveyard after rain. "God damn it," I muttered, snatching a rag from the glove box. My hand shook as I reached back, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. The dirt didn't just look wrong, it felt wrong, as if it didn't belong in the world of living things. I lifted my head, meaning to focus on the road, and that's when I saw it. The house was gone. Not just dark, not swallowed by fog. Gone. The headlights shone on nothing but an empty lot, weeds sprouting through cracked concrete, a fence sagging under rust. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. The house wasn't there. It had never been there. A cold wave rolled through my chest, pinning me in place. My breath rattled against the silence inside the cab. Then my eyes dropped to the meter. It hadn't stopped running. The red digits ticked higher and higher, faster now, like a clock winding out of control. But the car wasn't moving. And deep down, I realized the fare wasn't counting money anymore. It was counting time. My pulse thundered in my ears as I slammed the car into drive. Gravel spat from under the tires as I tried to peel away from the empty lot, from the dirt still dampening my seat, from the silence pressing down like a coffin lid. I didn't care where I went, as long as it was away. Then, click. The lock snapped down. All four doors, trapping me inside. My foot froze on the pedal. My hands went clammy around the wheel. Slowly, so slowly, I lifted my eyes to the rearview mirror. She was back. Sitting there, hands folded neatly in her lap, posture unbroken. But her face had changed. She wasn't blank anymore. She was smiling. It was too wide, stretching her lips into something brittle, like porcelain cracking. Her teeth glimmered faintly in the dark, as if the headlights themselves bent just to show them. I wanted to speak, to demand what she was. But the words caught in my throat. Her lips moved first. Soundless at first, then seeping into the cab like air through a broken seal. Take me home. The words weren't just heard, they pressed against me, like they'd been whispered from inside my skull. I forced myself to look at the meter. The digits blurred, flickering. No longer numbers. Not even symbols. Just letters forming slowly, deliberately, as though someone was typing them out one by one. And then I saw it. My name. Spelled out in blood-red digits. The cab shuddered, engine rattling like something was crawling inside it. The air grew colder still, sharp enough to sting with every breath. She leaned forward, her reflection in the mirror stretching closer, though she hadn't moved in the seat. Home, she said again, louder this time. Home. The locks rattled. The headlights flickered. And in that moment, with her eyes boring through me, I understood. She wasn't asking. She was telling me. They found my cab 2 days later, abandoned on the side of an old service road. Engine dead. Doors unlocked. No sign of me anywhere. The police searched the woods. Volunteers combed the ditches. Dogs picked up nothing. It was as if I'd stepped out of the driver's seat and dissolved into the fog. The only thing inside the car was the meter. Still running. The digits had climbed far beyond anything a normal ride could cost, spinning endlessly, red light glowing in the dark like a heartbeat. Dispatch swore I'd never called in the ride. My logbook showed no name, no number, no address. Just one word scrawled in ink I didn't remember writing, home. They towed the car back to the yard. Mechanics pulled it apart piece by piece. No fault, no reason the locks had jammed, no explanation for why the interior reeked of damp soil no matter how much they cleaned. But the meter never shut off. Even disconnected from the battery, it kept ticking upward. And here's the part people whisper about, the part one can't confirm, but everyone swears is true. Since that night, other drivers say they've gotten the call. Always the same intersection. Always the same time. Sometimes they ignore it. Sometimes they don't. The ones who do pick up say the passenger never speaks much. Just gives an address. Always different. Always far. And sometimes, when they check the mirror, there's no one there. If you ever find yourself in a taxi after midnight, and the driver seems nervous when you tell him where you're going, don't be surprised if he asks you twice. Because he's not just making sure he heard you. He's making sure you're real. And if the meter starts climbing too fast, pray you're not the one being taken for a ride.